First this morning, a young teenager's world was destroyed when her mother mysteriously disappeared just weeks before her 15th birthday, over 50 years ago. Do you know anything that can help solve this mystery?
She was my mum. We got on good, you know. She was there. She was a provider for us until the day that my mum had gone.
Isabella Skelton was born on the 21st of January 1934 as Isabella McDowell, known to family and close friends as Izzy. By 1969, Izzy was 35 years old and working as a secretarian typist, living in the Crumpsall area of Manchester.
My mum was born in Scotland. She was a petite lady, 5'2", 3-ish, slim build. She liked to be well presented herself. I think that's because she sort of needed to be presentable and work. She was a typist, secretary kind of person. She enjoyed her job. She did enjoy her job. At home, she was just a normal mum, her apron on, her kitchen, cooking, cleaning. Looked after myself and my two brothers. My father went out to work. He was a lorry driver. We got a house in Adrian Street in Salford, and that's where we all lived.
The family eventually settled on Lydiard Street, and Linda has fond memories of living there.
Nice house, quiet cul-de-sac. I'm the eldest of three, middle brother and a younger brother, and that was our life, and until obviously the day that my mum left.
Mum, I'm off to bed.
Good night, love.
On the 5th of June 1969, everything changed. This would be the last time Linda would ever see Isabella, as she disappeared without a trace.
I thought everything was fine at home. And obviously when this incident did happen, it came as such a shock because we weren't expecting it. The morning that I woke up, it was Friday the 6th of June. I was getting ready for school. It was just me and my father. And he explained that my mum had gone to work away. And that was it. The first words out of my mouth was, "Well, it's my 15th birthday in 2 weeks' time." That sounds really selfish when you think about it now, but I would never have dreamt that she'd go away knowing it was my birthday. It was a total shock. She never mentioned going anywhere. It was just out of character. I did find it strange because she wouldn't love us the way she loved us if this was what she wanted.
After Isabella's disappearance, Linda's life became tough.
A few weeks later, my father arranged for us to go up to Scotland to live with his brother because he couldn't cope with us down here. That didn't work out well, and I was put in a foster home in Middleton. I didn't understand why I was going into care or how I was going into care, but it just happened.
She did move forward with her life, getting married and having a family of her own, but she never stopped thinking about her mother, Isabella.
When you become a mother, it's different. It's harder. So I don't understand the reasoning. I wish I did. If she's gone on and got a better life, I can understand that. But I would have just liked to have known if she was okay.
Linda spent years trying to find out what had happened.
We went through the electoral rolls, we got a phone book and went through. We put an advert in the Sunday Post, and then we left a telephone number, and nothing came of that. There was nothing more I could do from that point.
In 2019, she reported Isabella's disappearance to police, and an investigation began.
I know it's a long time, possibly there is somebody out there that might remember something. And all I can say is to people, if it was their mum, what would they do? Whether she's dead or alive or I don't know how to explain. And I just need to know. I love her. She's my mother.
Oh, it's so distressing for Linda, just that not knowing what happened to her mum. I'm now joined by the head of GMP's Cold Case Review Unit, Martin Botmley. Martin, thanks so much for coming in today and telling us more about this case. Before we go into that, actually, we've been talking about the Crimewatch anniversary, and in fact, you've been coming on the programme appealing for the past 20 years. You got your first ever conviction on the first show that you came on, didn't you?
I did, yes. I came into the studio one evening 20 years ago, made an appeal about a murder investigation, and the very next morning we had a name, we made an arrest, and that man was convicted of the murder of the victim. Yeah,
a really good result. Well, let's hope the viewers watching today can help with this case. We heard from Isabella's daughter, Linda, in the film there. It's been over 50 years since Isabella's disappearance, but for a daughter it doesn't get any easier, does it?
Absolutely not, no. Linda's been not known what happened to her mum most of her life. She's been searching for answers all that time. You know, it's over 50 years, more than half a lifetime, and she needs to know the answers as to what happened to her mum. We need to find that out.
And Isabella, she was reported missing in 2019, wasn't she? Years after she went missing. How have you gone about investigating this?
Well, it's been quite difficult, obviously. She was only reported formally missing in 2019, but we could find no digital trace, no physical trace of Isabella at that time. So that then became a change from a missing persons investigation to a criminal investigation. And in fact, we received some information that a former home had been concreted over in the cellar and in the garage, in the garden, sorry. So we spent 3 months excavating that house, but we found no sign of any human remains or Isabella.
Let's go back to 1969, Martin. Isabella, she lived in Crimewatch in Manchester. That's right, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. So to put it into context, you know, that's just a month before Neil Armstrong first walked on the moon. One morning in June, she just walked out of the house and disappeared, and we've not seen or heard of her since that time.
People might be sat at home this morning watching Crimewatch. They might have that key piece of information which actually they think is quite insignificant. What would you say to anybody that's watching today?
Yes, it's just that little bit of information we need. You know, you may have known Isabella when she was living in Crimewatch. You may have worked with her at Bearing Services or Gallagher's cigarette factory. And, you know, any tiny piece of information that you can give us might help us, because we really need to find those answers for Linda and her family and put this matter to rest. Yeah,
as we heard from Linda, it's incredibly distressing for her and her family. They are desperate for some kind of closure, aren't they? Martin, thank you so much again for coming in and telling us more. As we said, 50 years, this mystery has haunted Isabella's family. Allegiances do change, so if you know anything at all that could help, please do the right thing. Get in touch. The contact details are on the screen throughout the whole of the programme.
But before that, an appeal for information about an unknown woman left to die outside a hospital.
Our mission is to bring hope and resolution to the 13,000 long-term missing persons and unidentified cases in the UK.
Daniela Mina is a volunteer with the charity Locate International.
Locate International is dedicated to finding long-term missing people and naming the unidentified, basically ensuring everything that can be done has been done. We don't stop appealing until that case is resolved. One of our media appeals at the moment is someone who became known as St Helier woman. On the 29th of May 2006, a woman was found in the car park of St Helier Hospital by a passers-by. She was feeling very, very unwell. And she was taken to the hospital where she was treated. She gave her name as Mary Kufi. She had no identifying documents on her person. She gave her birthday as the 27th of April, 1957. She said she was 47 years old, so there's a slight mismatch there. She mentioned she had flown in from Ghana that morning, but we don't know whether or not she originally was from Ghana or that she may have been just passing through. According to hospital staff, she spoke English well with an African accent. She deteriorated quite significantly. Sadly, she died in hospital. And it was later found that she had 61 bags of cocaine within her system. Despite an ongoing police investigation, there has been no more additional information to aid her identification. She's remained as St. Helier woman and has done for nearly the last 20 years.
Retired Detective Phil Brewer is a specialist advisor on modern slavery at the Human Trafficking Foundation.
I was approached by the charity Locate about their St. Helier woman case. There were some certain indicators within that story that she could potentially be a victim of exploitation of modern slavery and placing drugs within her body and then travelling the distance to the UK. And the fact that no one of any significance has come forward with any information also raises some concerns about whether she was in a situation that has provoked some fear in people coming forward. The sad thing is that when you consider a human being in terms of modern slavery and human trafficking, they're actually a relatively cheap commodity, and it really brings home the fact that we are talking about humans that traffickers consider extremely disposable.
Our belief is whoever dropped her off at the hospital may be the key to solving this case and identifying St. Helier women. I think it would be very easy to reflect on the chain of events that brought her to the hospital that day. We are not here to judge. We're here to find out what happened to her, find out what her name is, and bring her back to her family. Being from an African background myself, I really connected to that aspect of her life. And I think her being here on her own also really struck me as to how scary and how isolating that experience must have been for her. And to be unidentified for such a considerable amount of time when her family are probably looking for answers, to me that is what drives me every day, knowing that I can contribute into reuniting them in some way or another.
I'm joined now by Dave Ginstead from Locate International. Thanks for coming in, Dave. Can you tell us any more about this truly sad mystery?
Well, it's really tragic circumstances. You try and imagine if this was your daughter who died alone St. Helier's Hospital nearly 20 years ago on the 29th of May 2006. 61 small packages of cocaine in her body, and you can imagine the impact that had on her. And for us, it's about trying to find her name, that one person who might be able to return that to her.
It'd be so important. You say 61 packages. We've actually recreated in the studio what that would look like. Now, these are the same size and packaged in the same way as what would have been inside that poor woman when she died. I mean, it's just staggering when you see it like that. She would have been in so much pain. But she was able to give just some details about her situation to the hospital staff.
Yeah, despite the amount of pain that she was in, the fact that she was alone, she was able to give the name Mary Kofi, or Coffee. We don't know exactly how that was spelt. We hope that that's her real name. I mean, it was at that moment in time when she was in so much pain and getting treatment. And she gave a date of birth as well, which, again, we don't know if that's correct. But, again, in the circumstances, we hope that it is, so the 27th of April, 1957.
So it would roughly, you know, it would seem to tie up. It's certainly thereabouts, but also where she'd come in from, a place in Ghana.
Yeah, so from Accra, from Ghana, the police had checked the manifest that she'd come into Heathrow, and she's quite distinctive. We don't know if she went from the UK to Ghana and then came back again, but she's quite distinctive. I mean, she's 5'9". She's wearing a really bright piece of clothing with the yellow, black and red. And she had a handkerchief with the Argent Swallow logo on it, which is quite an unusual logo with Chinese writing underneath it.
Yeah, distinctive dress, as you say. We've also got the shoes that she was wearing as well, which we can see here. We just need to piece together as many clues as possible to find out who this lady was. And one of the things that's quite interesting is the hospital itself is not that close to any major airport. We know she came into Heathrow. There's plenty of other hospitals closer to that. And that could be significant in itself about how she got there.
Yeah, just being dumped at St Heliers Hospital, being stripped of all her identity, no passport, no money, all her identity taken away from her. We know that she came into Heathrow Airport. We know that the hospitals aren't close to there. So where was she travelling to? And it's nearly 20 years now. You know, allegiances change. Somebody might feel compelled to come forward, or we might have somebody who's looking at their family tree and have that gap in the family tree, and we just want to return this lady's name to her.
Yes, absolutely. Well said, Dave. Have a look if you have any knowledge about this case, or perhaps you recognise this image of this woman. Please do call in. Our contact details are below.
First this morning, 57-year-old Anita Rose left her house for a usual early morning dog walk, and tragically she never came home. Just to warn you, this film may be upsetting for some viewers.
My mum, she's a beautiful, strong, independent woman. She's funny and she's so kind. My mum's got 6 kids. I've got 4 brothers and a sister. And she looks after all of us, and she loved to spend time with all of us, with all of her grandchildren. My mum has a long-term partner, Richard. They've been together 13 years. They adored each other, and that mum was planning on growing old with him. And my mum dotes on us all, and we miss her.
Near the mouth of the River Stour in Suffolk lies Brantham. Surrounded by picturesque countryside, the village is where Anita Rose lived.
Mum moved to Brantham about 6 years ago, and she just loved the area, like literally loved walking and seeing people in the community, and Mum said to me that she feels safe here. Mum would get up early to walk Bruce in the mornings so that he had a good walk before she went to work. Being a Springer, he needed a lot of exercise.
On Wednesday, the 24th of July this year, Anita and her dog Bruce left their house on Palfrey Heights to begin their daily early morning walk on the outskirts of the village.
She left at 5 o'clock that morning. It was light at that point. Anita used an app on her phone that enabled her to track the route that she's taken around Brantham. As Anita leaves her home address, she'd walk through the estate in a northeast direction. Anita and Bruce circled the church and walked down south on Rectory Lane out into the open countryside. From that point, she'd follow a path along the railway line that runs through Brantham until she turned right towards the top of Newmill Lane. As she reached the top of Newmill Lane, she stopped her app at 6:03 that morning. But we know from previous walks that same location has been where Anita's previously stopped her phone. By that point of the walk, she'd walked for about 3 miles.
Police believe Anita followed the track parallel to the railway line the way she came. But instead of turning right and back towards the church, she carried straight on towards a pond, where she'd often take Bruce at the end of their walk. But Anita didn't make it that far.
At 6:25 a.m, a male cycling towards the railway station found Anita unconscious on a path at the bottom of Rectory Lane near the water sewage plants. He could see facial injuries and immediately called an ambulance. Bruce, her dog, was by her side with the lead wrapped around her leg.
Anita was taken to Addenbrooke's Hospital, but died 4 days later.
Her injuries that she sustained, she didn't look like my mum. The doctors tried to do what they could, but she passed away on the Sunday morning.
Anita's family are struggling to come to terms with her death.
My mum's funeral was on Friday, the 20th of September. It was a difficult day because we shouldn't be having to have a funeral for my mum. She's 57 years old and she had so much to live for, so much she was looking forward to. She was supposed to be on holiday right now. We just haven't... Well, we haven't got our mum, and our mum isn't here to look after us anymore. My mum is going to miss out on birthdays, the birth of my nephew, her grandson. She's going to miss my brother get married next year.
Police have launched a murder investigation into Anita's death.
We don't understand how someone could brutally, horrifically attack someone when they're walking their dog. I really want anyone that has any information, however small or insignificant they think it may be, to come forward and speak to the police. We need to find the person that done this to my mum. They need to face justice. It won't be enough, but they've done it to my mum and they could do it to somebody else, and they're still out there.
Really is just so sad. We can see how tough it is for Anita's family. I'm joined now by DCI Matthew Connik, who's investigating this matter. Matthew, what can you tell us about her last movements that day?
So it started as a normal day for Anita. She'd always leave for an early morning dog walk, and that morning she left her address in Palfrey Heights in Brantham at 5 a.m. She used a tracking app on her phone which was linked to her dog walks. She'd receive a reward after about an hour's walk. So we can see the route she's taken up towards the church, and then she heads down south towards the railway line, out into the open countryside, and as she heads up towards the top of Newmill Lane, we see her walk down that lane to the river before she doubles back out on herself. And at 6:03, we'd say she's alive and well at that point. She stops her app. It's after an hour's dog walk, and it's somewhere she's stopped that app before. It's between 6:03 and 6:25 when she's found by a male who's en route to the railway station, that she's found unconscious on the path next to the railway line.
And when she was found, she had some quite significant injuries as well.
Yeah, really significant face and head injuries. She was rushed to Addenbrooke's Hospital and sadly died a few days later from those injuries, and it's been absolutely devastating for the family.
Yeah, it really is. Now, interestingly, some of her items were missing that she left home with. They're no longer there. Tell us about those.
That's right. Her coat was stolen from her. That's a pink regatta waterproof jacket. She was clearly wearing that on the walk that day. That's still outstanding. We're appealing for anybody with any information about that jacket to come forward.
And we've got something else here. Now, this is a distinctive phone case.
That's right. Another item stolen from her was her iPhone, her mobile phone. We recovered that in Ipswich 3 days later on Saturday the 27th of July. But her phone case is outstanding, so we've made arrests in relation to the recovery of the phone. But that's a distinctive black quilted case with a gold stud and gold crown design.
So we need some information about that. And also these headphones.
That's right, Galaxy earbuds. They would have been in the case and potentially in the jacket pocket. They're outstanding. And any information about how anything's moved from Brantham to Ipswich, we're really keen to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's also a potential witness that you wish to trace. So we've got an image here that we can see. Talk us through this.
That's right. We've still been unable to identify any witnesses that have actually seen Anita on the walk that morning. This male was seen walking past the same CCTV camera as Anita 16 minutes later. He's a white male, he's balding at the top, grey at the sides, glasses. If you are that person or you know that person, please come forward. You may hold some vital information for us.
Be absolutely crucial to the investigation, as you say. Other than this person, who else do you want to hear from today?
Any witnesses? Anita was distinctive in her pink coat. She was walking her Springer Spaniel, that white and tan dog. Anybody that's seen either of them on the walk. And also, the railway line cuts right through Brantham. It's a busy commuter line to and from London. It sits between Manningtree and Ipswich. Anybody on that train that may have seen somebody, please get in touch.
And if anyone needs that further incentive to come forward, there's a financial reward put forward by the independent charity Crime Stoppers?
That's right. Crime Stoppers have offered a £20,000 reward for any information that leads to the arrest and conviction for anybody involved in the death of Anita, and that information can be provided anonymously.
Thank you, Matthew. So do you have any information? Have you got any information about these items, perhaps? Do get in touch. If so, the contact details are on your screen now. First this morning, a shocking murder that rocked a family in 1997. Can you help solve the case all these years on?
Paul was generous and kind. He was much loved by everybody. Paul's death has impacted every facet of our lives. We are not the same family.
Paul McGrath was 34. He worked as a joiner and lived in Denton, Greater Manchester.
Paul and I were really close, and he was very close to my sister, and he was really close to his mum. We were a very close family. He loved all his nephews and nieces, and me and my sister would laugh because he would pretend he didn't like the babies, and then we'd go out of the room and we'd come back and he'd be holding them and talking to them, and yeah, he was a great, great uncle to his nieces and nephews, and he loved them all, and they miss him dearly. Paul was very, very passionate about Manchester United. And my dad was very passionate about Manchester City, so like most Mancunian families, we were a split family. He got a lot of pleasure from football. In the months before Paul died, he was in a new relationship, lovely girl, and I think they had a fabulous future together. They were both really happy, they were very well suited, and I think it would have led to something.
On Sunday, the 6th of April 1997, Paul McGrath spent the afternoon and evening with his girlfriend and friends, visiting their local pubs. Their last stop was the Dog and Partridge on Ashton Street.
He met my father in there, they had a drink together. He was very sociable. He knew everybody in the pub. Would not be unusual for him on a Sunday night to have a few drinks in there.
At approximately 11:30 p.m, Paul and his friends left the pub. He said goodbye to his girlfriend and one of his friends by the Crown Point, a retail park, and Paul made his way home alone back to his address on Holland Street in Denton.
Paul went home without his girlfriend because he got work early on Monday morning. His stuff was out ready for work next day, all his kit and his uniform, and he got into bed and went to sleep, just as he would normally do on any other Sunday.
On the Monday morning, local workmen noticed the front door to Paul's property had been left ajar. And when they went to investigate, found Paul's lifeless body at the foot of his stairs.
I was getting my kids ready for school, and the phone went, and it was my dad. And I said, "Oh my God, Dad, what's happened?" Because he wouldn't ring me normally on a Monday morning, and I thought something had happened to my mum. It never ever occurred to me that anything would happen to my brother. You know, he was 34 years old, and then my dad had to break the news to me that my brother had been killed. I was hysterical. And I just remember pacing up and down, saying, "It can't be true, it can't be true, it can't be true." Because who would want to kill my brother? A decent, lovely person. There is no reason on this earth why anybody would want to kill him. Someone stabbed him 18 times in the hallway, in his boxer shorts, and left him there to die. Who would do that? They stabbed him 18 times. That's not an accident, that's a brutal murder.
27 years on, Gillian and her family still haven't given up hope that one day they'll get the answers they're looking for and get justice for Paul.
Paul's death has been absolutely overwhelming in every aspect of our lives. Nobody had a bad word to say about him, nobody. I cannot believe that anybody to this day would try and cover for these people who have done such a brutal act, an act of murder on an innocent man. I can't tell you how much I miss Paul. There's not a birthday, a Christmas, a family event where we don't think about him, where we wish he was a part of it. And that pain can only be reduced by us getting justice. If I saw Paul today, I would just say to him, "I'm so sorry. We're trying to find justice for you. And I'm so sorry that you've missed so much." And tell him how much I love him.
Such a powerful plea there from Paul's sister. And earlier, I spoke to the head of GMP's cold case unit, Martin Botmley. I started by asking him how the family have coped, living with the grief for more than 20 years.
You can see how upset Gillian is even to this day. You know, this has been going on a long time, but Paul's missed out on a lifetime of birthdays, Christmases, family celebrations, and we really need to get the answers for Gillian as to what happened and who did it.
Why are you reviewing this case?
Well, we never close a murder investigation. You know, with the advances in DNA technology, forensic science, and of course, after such a long time, loyalties can change. And I believe there's somebody out there who knows who killed Paul, and they should tell us today.
Can you just take us back to the evening this happened and just talk us through the details that you know?
Yes, it was a Sunday afternoon in April. Paul went out with his partner and a few acquaintances and went round a few pubs in the local area. They went to the Stamford, the Dog and Partridge and the Silver Springs and had a really nice convivial evening. Around about 11:30, the group dispersed. Paul went home alone and got home and got ready for work the next morning before going to bed.
And it was then that some witnesses described something happening in the small hours.
Yeah, around about 1 a.m, two witnesses, two neighbours, heard a noise and a banging and looked out of the window to investigate. The alarm wasn't raised at the time, but this because they just saw two men talking to Paul at the doorway. And it wasn't until the next morning that the awful truth was discovered that Paul had been murdered.
And that was in the morning, around about 7:30 a.m, and they discovered what happened. I mean, he stabbed multiple times.
Yeah. Two workmen noticed Paul's door was ajar, so they went to investigate. Paul was lying there in the hallway in his boxer shorts, which kind of suggested that he'd been roused from his sleep during the night, probably about 1 a.m. He'd been stabbed 18 times. It was a horrible murder.
Absolutely horrific. And do you have any motive behind this attack that you can establish?
Well, Paul was a really well-liked man. He didn't have any enemies, but he did know some people who were in dispute with another group of men, and I believe he was targeted for that reason.
Who are you appealing to today?
I'm appealing to anybody who knows what happened. I believe there's friends out there, relatives, people in the community who do know the answers that we're desperately seeking. It's fair to say that 2 men were arrested and charged in the year afterwards, but they were cleared at court. But loyalties change after such a long time, so please give us the answers.
You've said that over such a long time, loyalties change, allegiances change. What doesn't change is the grief that the family's feeling. So if anyone needs that further incentive to come forward, you've got one, haven't you, that you can offer them?
Yeah, the family's still hurting, but loyalties have changed. You know, you can give information anonymously and identities can be protected. Just remember there's a £50,000 reward on offer for information leading to the arrest and conviction of Paul's killers.
Hopefully we can get some answers, Martin. Thank you. If you remember anything at all that could find Paul's killer or killers, please help his grieving family. Please do get in touch. The number to call is 08000 468 999, or remember, you can scan our QR code.
Our first case today dates back to 1993 and is a heartfelt appeal from the family of Karen Hales, who was murdered in her own home.
Karen was a daughter to be proud of, really happy, popular at school and at work. She was just full of life, absolutely full of life. Every day I just can't get my head round why that happened.
I couldn't help her. Every night I dream about this.
21-year-old Karen and her fiancé Peter had bought a house on Lavenham Road in Ipswich and lived there with their 18-month-old daughter, Emily.
Karen, where are my socks?
They're in the second drawer.
When she wasn't working, Karen spent as much time as she could with her daughter.
Karen took to being a mother as like a duck to water.
She was a brilliant mum. She idolised Emily. And I saw her on the Saturday, and I told her that her dad and I will probably call over on Sunday night. She definitely knew we were going to pop over.
All right, love, see you later.
All right. Oh, wait.
Just before 4 p.m. on Sunday the 21st of November, Peter went to work.
I'll see you later. Bye-bye, Emily.
At around 4:15 p.m, Jerry and Graham popped in to see Peter at work.
Is that you, Peter? Oh, all right. How are you doing?
They then went to visit Karen and Emily.
Well, when we arrived, I knocked at the door twice and got no response.
Karen?
So I looked through the letterbox, saw the smoke. And then I tried the door, and it was unlocked to my amazement, because it always kept it locked. And I ran through to the kitchen. Oh, I put the rest of the fire in with some water. And then I noticed the stab wounds. And realised she'd been murdered.
Emily was near her body. First thing he done was picked Emily up and gave her to me. She was really crying. I can remember shaken from head to foot. And all of a sudden, I thought, some evil somebody has been in and murdered her.
Since Karen's death 31 years ago, there have been numerous investigations and a Crimewatch appeal. However, the murderer has not been found.
Karen was stabbed, and we know that she also had some other injuries. The level of assault the violence used was just off the scale.
Retired Detective Chief Inspector Andy Guy heads up the cold case team for Norfolk and Suffolk Constabulary, who are investigating the murder.
Karen didn't have any secrets that we could find. She was just a typical, working mum. She wasn't involved in anything unsavoury. She wasn't involved in crime or drugs or anything like that. There's no reason why anybody would harm her. Just unfathomable. We know that Emily was in the house. I mean, what's horrendous is that whoever started that fire, they're condemning Emily, who was 18 months old, to death. The personal people responsible for this will have used violence elsewhere. Your first offence, you don't go into a house, murder a woman and set the house on fire with a small child there.
Police believe Karen was stabbed with 2 knives, which were missing from the kitchen, and a debit card, chequebook and purse was stolen from her bag.
Lebanon Road and the area suffered from multiple burglaries at the time. But Karen told Peter the day before the attack that someone had tried a door handle late that night, which had unnerved her.
There were several witnesses who saw a man in a blue parka. However, further inquiries ruled that potential suspect out.
There were lots of people about when the attack happened. There were 2 boys walking past who saw smoke coming from the property.
Yeah. Every night I dream about this. Get about 4 hours sleep every night until we get the answers,
There is now a new hope that the person responsible will be found.
DNA was in its infancy in 1993. We are looking at what we can do with modern technology. There were items seized at the time that may contain offender DNA. We are revisiting a lot of the key players. The 3 people that we were very interested in at the time are all dead. Individuals were scared to talk about these people because they were violent, they were burglars, they were involved in drugs. And we'd like to know if people have information, then now's the time to tell us. Nothing will ever bring Karen back, but to get closure, I think, would bring peace to them.
We often sort of wonder, what she'd be like today, 30 years on. We'll never know.
Really is just so sad. And I'm joined now by retired Detective Andy Guy from Norfolk and Suffolk Cold Case Unit, who is still very much the senior investigating officer in this case. I mean, Andy, it's just awful to see how much this is still affecting the parents, understandably. Can you just run us through the key events of what happened that day?
So it was Sunday, the 21st November 1993. Peter, who was Karen's partner, leaves for work, where he worked locally. He's visited by Karen's mum and dad, Jerry and Graham. They get there about 4:15. They then go to Karen's home to find the door unlocked, a fire in the house, and Karen on the floor, dead, with Emily beside her.
It really is just absolutely awful. Now, the actual attack itself, there was only really a small opportunity for that to have happened throughout the day.
Yeah, so as I said, Peter went to work just before 4 o'clock. Graham and Jerry were round Karen's house about 45 minutes later. We know a 999 call went into the police at 4:57. So somewhere in that 45 minutes, somebody's gone in the house and did what they did.
And you mentioned the door being open. That is significant as well.
Yeah, Karen had a series of locks on the door, including a bolt. It was unusual that the door would be unlocked. The night before, she'd had somebody try the door handle late at night, which she'd told Peter about. So yes, that was unusual.
And what about the weapon itself? What have you established about that?
In the house were a block of knives, a laser block and a wooden block that was common in the 90s. 2 of those knives are missing, and we know that Karen had 9 stab wounds. None of those knives were ever recovered.
That's absolutely awful. Let's take a look at the map here, Andy, because I just want you to remind our viewers just where this happened, and also not just where it was, how the weather was at the time, because that's significant as well.
Yeah, so unusually for November, there was a coating of snow on the ground. This is Ipswich town centre. Lavenham Road is just to over to the southwest. Mm-hmm. This is the London Road. This is the Hadley Road, and this area here is Chantry Park, which is an area used for recreation by local people and would be well known by people who lived in Ipswich.
How can the public help you today, Andy?
There's 2 areas really where we would appeal. Firstly, we've always believed that the key to this is local to the Lavenham area, and people may know things that they weren't prepared to tell us in 1993. The second is any professionals that may have dealt with individuals. Perhaps if they've seen this, they might link the events, haven't been told something in the course of their work.
So the professionals could be, for example, prison staff perhaps, or nurses, people that could have had that information that they didn't really know what to do with. This could be critical to this investigation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really need to hear from those. Andy, thank you. If you know anything about Karen's murder, please do call in. Her family deserve answers. The contact number is 08000 468 999, and those details are at the bottom of the screen, just next to the clock, and they'll be there throughout the whole programme.
First this morning, 33-year-old Karen Reid was shot at the doorway to her home. Do you know anything that could help finally solve her murder?
33-year-old Karen Reid was a respected geophysicist who lived and worked in Woking, Surrey. She had a degree in geology and a master's in IT. She was popular at work, had a lot of friends, and an active social life. Karen was the eldest of 3 children, and her sister had recently moved in with her at her home in Woking. On Saturday, the 30th of April 1994, Karen spent the morning running errands before heading to work.
She finished work at about 6 o'clock that evening, and she was asked if she wanted to lift home by one of her colleagues, but Karen decided to walk home that night, probably arriving home around 8, 8:30. She'd arranged for one of her girlfriends to come round to enjoy the evening and have a bottle of wine. Karen's sister worked nights, so she wasn't at the house that evening. Her friend arrived at about 20 to 9 with a bottle of wine that she grabbed on her way over. They were just catching up, they were chatting, they were good girlfriends, probably putting the world to rights like we've all done over a drink.
At around 9 p.m, there was a knock at the door.
Karen could see what appeared to be a pizza delivery man. So Karen's just called back over her shoulder to her friend and asked whether she'd ordered a pizza. She hadn't. Karen answered the door to find a male standing on her doorstep with a pizza delivery box in his hands.
He asked Karen to confirm her address, which she did.
Her friend then heard a series of loud bangs.
The man shot Karen 5 times at close range and ran from the scene.
There's no reason for anyone to do this to Karen whatsoever. She was an innocent woman, she was a young professional woman, and on that night, someone's turned up at Karen's house. They merely confirmed the address, and at that point shot Karen on her doorstep.
A major manhunt was launched to find her killer, and police quickly identified some important clues linked to an earlier incident.
2 weeks before Karen's murder, on the 15th of April, police noticed a red Cavalier driving around the Barnsbury estate that looked out of place, so they tried to stop the car. There was a pursuit before the driver ran from the car, leaving it in situ. Within the car, they found a Delsey luggage bag. In that bag appeared to be an assassination kit. There was a Hungarian 9mm pistol with a silencer attached to it, a sheathed commando knife, a map of the local area, including the Barnsbury estate where Karen lived, and some provisions. So it would appear in our mind that that was probably a first attempt to carry out an assassination at Karen's address.
The investigation into Karen's murder was one of the most exhaustive in the history of Surrey police. At the time, officers followed nearly 3,000 individual lines of inquiry and took more than 1,700 statements. But the clues were not enough to find her killer. And 30 years on, Karen's family are still looking for justice.
We're hopeful that people who perhaps know what happened on that evening, know who orchestrated the murder of Karen, will now come forward. No murder inquiry is ever forgotten. We will never give up trying to find Karen's killer for the benefit of her memory and her family.
And I'm with DCI Gareth Hicks. You saw from the film there, Gareth, it's such a violent and unusual attack. Can you just remind us the key details of what happened?
Yeah, it's horrific. So on that evening on Saturday, the 30th of April 1994, Karen was at home on the Barnsbury estate in Woking with her friend. Barnsbury estate is a really quiet residential estate just outside Woking, as we can see on the map. They were just having a bottle of wine. There was a knock at the door. They both looked through the window, saw a guy on the doorstep with a pizza delivery box. They hadn't ordered any food. So Karen went to the door. When she opened the door, the man just asked her to confirm her address, which she did. And at that point, she was shot 5 times at close range.
It's absolutely horrific. And as part of your inquiries, you don't even think Karen was the intended target?
No, not at all. We know that her sister's husband was involved in a fair amount of criminality around the time. In fact, he was convicted for conspiracy to murder. Karen's sister had moved in shortly beforehand. And we think it was her that they were after. Karen had no idea the threat she was possibly facing.
What can you tell us about the person that did this?
So we know they were a white male, about 6 foot, 6'1", thin to medium build. They had dark brown hair, dark eyes, and they were wearing silver-rimmed spectacles. And we could see from the artist's impression that was done at the time, that was the shooter at the door.
Now, there was the vehicle mentioned in the film, and you believe there's possibly a foiled attempt at an earlier murder attempt. We can see this vehicle there. Inside that, there was a number of items. You're going to talk us through what was inside now.
Yeah, so that 2 weeks previously, local officers saw the car. They didn't like the look of it, so they went to stop it. It made off. The driver dumped the car and ran. They couldn't find him. When they went back to the car, they found that bag on the front seat with the items inside it, which confirmed there was a map in there as well with Karen's address, which confirmed pretty much that that's where they were heading for.
When we see some of those items now, let's start here with a handgun that was inside.
Yeah, again, something we just don't see in Surrey. You know, a pistol with a silencer. We've got an Marine Commando dagger. Again, a horrific weapon.
Again, just no excuse to have these in a vehicle, and these other items here.
Yeah, items of clothing to change appearance possibly. And then the bag that they were all contained with on the front seat of the car.
Okay, just chilling to think that was driving around the streets at the time. Now, Gareth, you're confident there are people out there that know what happened. What would you say to them?
Absolutely. I'd say it's been 30 years now. And whilst I can fully understand why at the time people were really worried about coming forward because of the threat that could possibly put them under, Karen's family desperately want to find out what went on. And we're just hoping that people now, after all this time, feel it's safe to come forward and help us out with who was behind that first attempt, and then importantly, who was that shooter on the second occasion and brought that event together.
And if anyone's out there and they've got the information and they still need that further incentive to come forward to you and your team, there is a financial reward as well.
Yes, the independent charity Crime Stoppers have put forward a £20,000 reward for information that leads to a conviction. So we very much appreciate if people come forward now.
Thank you, Gareth. If you know anything that could help detectives solve this awful case, please do get in touch. The number to call is 08000 468 999. First, though, a chilling investigation into a man responsible for 2 rapes in London.
He saw me in a disadvantaged state. I felt violated.
It really made the hairs on the back of our neck stand on end.
Somebody is literally preying on people.
We've got not only a stranger rapist for 1 offence, but 2.
I'd never felt so alone and so scared.
On Friday the 4th of May 2018, a 19-year-old woman was enjoying a night out with some friends.
The victim and her friends went to Heaven nightclub on Villiers Street, which is right next to Charing Cross train station in the very centre of London. Around 2:30 in the morning, she was feeling unwell and decided to go outside for some fresh air and to start to think about how she was going to get home. She used her mobile phone to request a taxi, and while she was waiting for that taxi, she was approached by a man. He initially began to touch her by putting his arms around her waist and asking for a hug, and then also offered to help her find her taxi and said that he knew a pickup point where the taxi would collect her from. The 2 of them walked a short distance from Villiers Street across the Strand. The victim did become concerned that they were perhaps heading in the wrong direction, and she did challenge the suspect on that, and he reassured her and overruled her to say that he knew the direction they were going and that it was safe and correct, and ultimately ended up in an alleyway called Exchange Court.
The woman was then raped.
After the offence, the suspect led the victim out of the alleyway and back onto the busy thoroughfare of the Strand. By this point, the victim was distressed and was crying. It's at this point that the suspect has then left.
I remember sitting on a step crying. I felt violated and embarrassed. I'd never felt so alone and so scared.
The victim told her friends what had happened to her, and shortly afterwards reported it to the police.
I had to report it because I didn't want it to happen to anyone else.
Detective Chief Inspector Chris Heathcote and his team began an investigation.
We were able to conduct a CCTV trawl and were able to pick up footage of the victim.
CCTV footage showed the victim walking around Charing Cross, joined by a man who police are treating as a suspect.
It seems that the suspect has deliberately taken our victim on a convoluted route, but unfortunately, we weren't able to find footage of a high enough quality that we thought we could circulate the face of the suspect. Forensic samples taken were submitted to the laboratory, but unfortunately they weren't already on our national DNA database to give us a name of that suspect.
With no forensics, DNA or CCTV leads, the investigation hit a dead end. Then 4 years later, another case was reported.
On Saturday, the 10th of December 2022, a 37-year-old woman who was at a bar on Great Eastern Street in Shoreditch in East London. And at around 1 in the morning, she began to feel unwell and had decided to go outside for some fresh air and also to think about how she might get home. It was while she was outside that she remembers having a conversation with a man who then suggested that they walk together so that he could help her get home. The man led her to the Curtain Road area.
She was led down an alleyway where she was raped.
I believe he saw me in a disadvantaged state. It's pretty disturbing. You know, I'm somebody's daughter. He violated my space and my trust.
The victim reported the attack to the police.
They're both a lone male approaching a lone female at the end of a night out and trying to persuade those victims to leave a place where they knew where they were and where they had friends and go elsewhere with him out of public view. The descriptions given by both victims were also similar in terms of the age range, the height, the build, the facial hair and hair colour as well.
This time, CCTV trawls gave police a clearer image of the suspect.
And what that shows is this male suspect has led the victim away from the bar, but not taking her in any particular route. It's in a number of different directions around the Shoreditch area. One hypothesis is that this was the suspect looking for a specific place to commit this offence.
This time, forensic samples show that the attacker in both cases was the same man.
I think it's fair to say it really made the hairs on the back of our neck stand on end, actually, to think that we've got not only a stranger rapist for one offence, but two.
His victims' lives have been changed forever.
I really didn't know how to process it all. I had to just carry on, but underneath it all, I was falling apart. Whenever I think about it or have flashbacks from it, I feel like I can't breathe. I feel trapped. I don't trust people the way that I used to.
We're working closely with them and giving them the support that we can, but we know that what they really deserve is to have some closure by knowing that we've found this man and that he faces justice.
He doesn't deserve to keep carrying on a normal life.
It's a human right just to try and get home safe. And it's really sad that there's an individual who appears to be getting away with this. It would mean a lot if he was brought to justice.
I'm now joined by the investigating officer, DCI Chris Heathcote from the Met Police. You saw from the appeal there. Chris, this really is quite disturbing. Can you just remind us when and where these took place?
Well, both offences took place in the early hours. The first offence was on the 5th of May 2018, and that was in Exchange Court just off the Strand in Westminster in central London. And the second offence took place on the 10th of December 2022, and that was in an alleyway off Curtain Road in Shoreditch in East London.
Now, if you're not familiar with London, you may not be aware that they're actually quite far apart, aren't they?
They are. There's several miles separating the two scenes, but they're both big, busy nighttime economy areas, and our hypothesis is that these offences have happened there for that reason.
Now, at first, you were investigating these separately, but you've actually been able to link them to what you believe is the same suspect.
Yes, they were investigated separately to begin with, but there were some similarities. In both cases, the victims felt unwell in the bars they were in. They went outside. They were approached by the suspect, who they both described as in his 30s, with olive skin and dark hair. And on both of those occasions, his behaviour was similar. He encouraged them to leave the groups where, and the places that they knew where they were, to go with him into alleyways where they were each raped. And it was the DNA evidence from the second offence that showed us it was the same suspect for both.
That's absolutely horrendous. Well, you've mentioned the suspect, you've described him. Let's have a look now at some CCTV that you've provided us. Here we go. Can you just explain what's happening here? This is the man you need to trace. Yes,
this is CCTV from the second offence in Shoreditch. It shows the suspect leading the victim away from the busy thoroughfares into the more quiet side streets. And our hypothesis is here that he's potentially looking for a place to commit this offence. And I would say his behaviour is quite smothering of the victim.
Yeah, it certainly appears that way, he's physically putting his hands on there. So this is the image of the man you desperately need to trace. Now, what would you say to anyone out there that may have been a victim themselves of this type of crime?
I would say that it's really important that every sexual offence that is committed is reported to the police, no matter how long ago they happened or who the suspect is. And although these offences are difficult to prosecute, I can say that any report will always be taken very seriously. There'll be specialist officers involved in the investigations. We will collect any evidence that will prove what happened. We will make the suspects the focus of the investigation and their behaviour, not the victims. And we will take to court any cases that have a realistic prospect of conviction. And that can, in some circumstances, that can include cases where it's one word against the other.
Yeah, it's really, really strong to say that there are some people, though, you fear may have possibly been targeted by this individual as well, and you want to hear from them.
Yes, I've got real concerns that this suspect may have committed offences against other victims because of the time between these offences and afterwards. It's a long period of time, and so I would ask anyone who thinks that they may have been a victim of this suspect, if they're feeling embarrassed, if their recollection is patchy, to nevertheless report that to the police.
Chris, thank you. We certainly need to catch this man. We're going to keep this image on the website so you can take a closer look. If you do know anything that might help with this case, then all of our contact details are at the bottom of the screen, right next to the clock. But first, I'm joined by DC Ed Davey from the Met. Thanks for coming in, Ed, because today you're appealing for help about the death of this man, Ghaffar Ahmad. What can you tell us about this case?
Well, as is often the case, this matter was brought to the attention of the emergency services by a dog walker who found Mr Ahmad lying on the pavement of Crescent Road around the back of Turnpike Lane tube station in the London Borough of Haringey. This was at 7 a.m. on the morning of Saturday the 18th of November last year. He was unresponsive, so the dog walker gave him CPR and called an ambulance. The ambulance arrived and took him to hospital, where sadly a few days later he died from his injuries.
Yeah, really, really sad. So what have you been able to establish what may have happened?
Well, we know what the cause of death is. A post-mortem and a medical examination found bruising to his jaw and blunt force trauma to the back of his head. He was also hypothermic, and the doctors think that he'd come that way after being lying on the street for several hours. So we think possibly a punch to the face, resulting in a fall and a blow to the back of the head, and then being left in the cold and the wet. It was a winter's night, after all, led to him being hypothermic as well, and all those factors combined sadly led to his death.
Really sad. What do we know about him as a person?
Well, he was 39 years old. He was originally from Pakistan, but had been living in the UK for 8 years. We spoke to his friends, his family and members of his community, and they all told us that he was a friendly, generous and hard-working man who had time for anyone. So he was a lovely guy by all accounts, which makes this all the more tragic.
Yeah, it certainly does. Now, I know you and your team, you've done extensive work surrounding CCTV. You've got some footage here. What can you tell us about what we're going to see right now?
So what we're going to see right now is some footage from the Jago, which is a music bar in Dalston. We were led here by some financial transactions, some of the last uses of Mr Ahmad's card. When we got there, the staff told us that he was a well-known and well-liked regular. You can see there that he's waving to the customers as he's leaving. You know, his night is coming to an end, but theirs has only just begun and he's wishing them well. Him and his friend, the man he's with, they then head off and they get on a bus back to Stroud Green Road, where they both lived in neighbouring flats.
OK, we can see that on the map now. Here we go. So that's where they go. The Jago bar's at the bottom of the screen there. That's where they'd just come from. And it's some distance away where they'd gone to. They changed clothes. And what happened after that?
Yeah, so having travelled from the Jago to the Finsbury Park area on a bus, Ghaffar goes back to his flat and re-emerges slightly later. He goes to a nearby off-licence, buys a small bottle of bourbon, and then onto a cash point where he withdrew £60. And from there, we sort of lose him. He travels up to Turnpike Lane Station. We know he arrives there at 23 minutes past 2 because his phone bounced off a mast in that area. And that's the last trace we have of him until he's found several hours later, severely unwell.
So his phone was activating a signal which the mast picked up, and you got a specific time for that.
Exactly.
You mentioned the off-licence there. We've actually got CCTV of that, which we can see, which, although it's a great clear image of him, what's sad to say is this is the last image that you have of him, isn't it?
It is, yes. And, you know, there he is, being this friendly, gregarious character that everyone told us he was. He was known to the owner, that he flashes the peace symbol to as he walks in, but the chap that he's just shaking hands with is a stranger. He's just being a friendly guy. And this is, sadly, the last footage we have of him alive.
Really sad. Now, there was another witness that you want to mention that did find him on the floor. What happened there?
The dog walker wasn't actually the first person to find Ghaffar. That was another man who found him at about 5:30 in the morning. Unfortunately, this person didn't realise the severity of this situation and took advantage of Ghaffar. They stole his wallet and used it to buy some cigarettes and alcohol in a nearby off-licence. So we know from this person that Ghaffar was already injured on the floor by 5:30. We have looked very closely into this man, very hard, and have found several rock-solid alibis for him. So we're confident that he's not the man that's brought Ghaffar to his sad end. But from him, we do know that by 5:30 a.m, Ghaffar was already lying injured on the floor.
For some time as well?
Yes, for some time.
So there's a lot of people watching this right now. How can they help you today? We've got a good description of him here, haven't we? We can see that clear image of what he was wearing.
Yes, exactly. You can see he's a Pakistani male wearing a black jacket, a black T-shirt with a sparkly D&G logo on the breast and jeans. Your viewers can help us by telling us if they have seen a man that matches this description between midnight, say, and 5:30 in the morning in the Dalston or Turnpike Lane area. It would be great to speak to them, know anything they do at all about this.
Yeah, that was Saturday, the 18th of November, 2023.
That's exactly right, yes.
Thank you, Ed. If you have any information that could be helpful, no matter how small you think it could be, please do pick up that phone. Our number is 08000 468 999. You can use any of the other contact details which are on the screen throughout the programme, just down the bottom by the clock. An impressive dent on bicycle crime. But first, I'm with DS Jim Hinchliffe from the Met Police, who's appealing for information after the death of this lady. This is 58-year-old Ina Rodriguez, who was struck by a moped running a red light. Thanks for coming in today, Jim. It's actually a tragic case, what's happened. Just talk us through what did occur.
Yeah, the incident happened on January the 16th in London on Talgarth Road, which is quite close to Barron Court Station. Ina had finished work and was on her way home when she got to a crossing at about 6:05 in the evening. And as she was crossing the road, she was collided with by a moped that jumped the red light.
Hit by this moped. Now, we're going to see some CCTV now. Now, I should say we've slowed this down substantially, but just play this clip on that you've provided us, Jim, because this we can see as a red light. It's going to go from amber to red, and then once it goes red, we're going to see highlighted with a red circle the moped that you describe that is going at pace. Now, we've slowed this down, as I say, it's going at pace, and here we're going to stop it. That is where it collides with Ina as she was crossing the road. Now, talk us through what happened after that, Jim, because it's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, the rider and pillion passenger picked the bike up, brushed themselves down, got back on the bike and left the scene, and leaving Ina injured.
And they go off and leave. Now, what we can see towards the bottom of the screen is a number of people, including those from the vehicles, across the road running over to help this lady that was lying in the road. She had substantial injuries and that she was taken to hospital. And what happened there, Jim?
She was in hospital for a week, having treatment. During an operations, there were complications and she sadly passed away.
It is just so, so sad because we saw so many people trying to help her there, and two people that didn't were those on the moped who just made off. Now, you managed to trace where they went to after that, Jim. We've got some CCTV here. Talk us through what we're seeing now.
Yeah, the moped shortly after the collision was parked up on Edith Road, where the two suspects then covered a bike in order to hide it.
So we can see the cover going on there. These are the two that were riding the bike at the time. They were traced on camera to this location, and then they walk off. What happens there? Do you know?
We have two further sightings of the suspects, but unfortunately we lose them in Oriel Road, which is a residential street.
We can see that there, and looking at the map, it's actually not far, because towards the bottom of the screen we can see where the incident occurred. It's all quite close together, but that area there is where you lost sight of them, so we don't know where they've gone after that. What about the moped itself? What clues have you got from that?
Yep, the moped is a stolen vehicle. It had been stolen again within 2 miles of the incident, between the 5th and 6th of January.
So only about 2 weeks before?
Yes.
OK, now this is the vehicle. You've managed to recover this vehicle. tell us about what you know from this, because it's red in colour, but it hasn't always been the case.
Yeah, between the theft of the moped and the incident, someone had hand-painted it red.
So originally, this is what it would have looked like. We can see on the right-hand side. I mean, very, very different. So that is how it would have appeared when it was stolen about 2 weeks before. Now, Jim, it's worth saying here that the people that stole the moped are not necessarily the ones that were riding at the time, but it is crucial you find out as much about the theft of that moped as possible, because that could help your inquiry.
Yeah, we can't assume that the people who stole the moped are responsible for the collision, and it could have changed hands.
I mean, these things often
times.
change hands. We know that from what your inquiries, but it's crucial you find out as much as you can about that stolen vehicle at the time.
Yeah.
I have to ask about Ina's 2 daughters. I mean, they must be absolutely distraught with what's happened.
Yeah, her 2 daughters are absolutely devastated, and they want answers in regard to what happened on the day and who's responsible.
They want some answers, you want some answers, we want to help you get some answers. But if anyone's at home and they can give that information across and they're in 2 minds about coming forward, there is a reward that's been put forward by the independent charity Crime Stoppers. Tell us about that.
That's correct. There's a £20,000 reward that leads to a conviction of the people responsible.
OK, Jim, thank you. Hopefully we can get you those answers. If you can help at all with this case, please do call in. Our contact details are at the bottom of the screen, just there next to the clock.
Jack O'Sullivan, who went missing from the Hotwells area of Bristol in March this year. We spoke to his mum last week.
Nobody would have a bad word to say about Jack. He really is a very kind, caring young man, very family orientated. He's quite quiet, but quite cheeky at home. He's one to put people before himself and just a really good egg. It's a very strange world without him being at home, because we're so used to being a very close family. Nothing makes sense. Nobody can tell me where he is or what's happened. It's a roller coaster from hell. Until somebody can tell me where Jack is, I have to somehow believe that he's somewhere, and I'm not going to stop looking until I get an answer. Some days you cope better than others. I think probably the strain that we're under at times can become overwhelming, but somehow we keep the fight up, because that's what Jack would do. I can't let him down, and I have to get an answer. It's like your worst nightmare. Even though time has moved forward, I'm still on the 2nd of March. My life is still in complete disbelief and shock. The reality, is that Jack's not here. The last time I saw Jack, it's very vivid in my mind, because he drove me to meet our friends and was full of laughter, full of banter, gave me a kiss. That moment is fixed in my mind because he had a big smile on his face. I don't know where Jack is, but I can't accept that I'm not going to see him. I just have to, stick with that belief until somebody can tell me anything else. That's where I am. And I have to kind of live with that tiny little bit of hope that it's all going to be okay.
Such heartfelt words from Jack's mum there. We can speak to DI Jason Chidgey now from Avon and Somerset Police. Jason, thanks so much for coming in to tell us more about this. Let's start with Jack's movements that night. What more can you tell us?
I can tell you that Jack attended a house party on the 2nd of March after leaving his home address on the 1st of March to meet with friends. We know he left the address and tried to get a taxi. We're sure he was minded to make his way home after he left. And the map here shows you the route that we've traced him on CCTV up until the last known location where we can for sure say it was definitely him.
He was also picked up on CCTV along this route, wasn't he? So let's just play that, and you can just talk us through what we're seeing here.
So this is a location just above where that map ends. This is Brunel Way, which leads into Bristol. As you can see, there's lots of vehicles using this route. And this is an unconfirmed sighting of Jack, but one based on the distance and the time. We're confident it's very likely to be him.
We've also got a still image. What can we see here, Jason?
This is just slightly on the other side of the river, and this is a road called Bennett Way, which again is it's at 3:39 in the morning. So it's around the time that Jack was roughly last seen, and this person is walking back towards Hot Wells again.
Yeah. Let's take a look at what Jack would have been wearing that night. There are various images that were circulated on social media that have given you an idea of what he was wearing. So talk us through this.
Yeah, so on the bottom half, he was wearing blue chinos with quite distinctive brown Ralph Lauren shoes with really distinctive white soles. And on the top, he was wearing a cream woolen jumper with his green khaki Barber jacket.
Now, there are also some specific details of the night in question that are worth going through because they might just help to jog somebody's memory.
Yeah, we're hoping they do. It was a particularly cold night after a mild week in Bristol, and it snowed. So it would have been very cold, it would have been icy, and there was snow on the ground. Bristol City played Cardiff that afternoon, the day that Jack was last seen. So we're hoping that those two events might trigger something for somebody to come forward and provide us with some additional information.
And Jason, this is an ongoing investigation, isn't it? We heard from Jack's mum just before. The family are desperate for answers.
They are, and they've showed tremendous resilience in the 7 months since Jack went missing. We've utilised an awful lot of units inside of our organisation to try and give them the answers that they so desperately need. We're just hoping that someone can come forward with some new information.
Yeah. Jason, really appreciate you coming in and telling us more. So if you do remember seeing Jack in the early hours of Saturday the 2nd of March this year, or if you think you may have captured him on CCTV or dashcam or any doorbell footage, then please get in touch. Our number 08000 468 999. But first this morning, we're going to Huddersfield for a heartbreaking appeal about a fatal arson that took place 27 years ago. It claimed the life of a young 7-year-old boy, so as you can imagine, this is a difficult watch.
He was a ray of sunshine. Wherever we went, he would light up any room. He used to pick me flowers. He'd run down the path with them and, "I've got you some flowers, Mummy." Joe was very loving. He told me that he loved me nearly every day. It's had a massive impact on our family.
Seven-year-old Joe McCafferty, like many children his age, enjoyed playing with his friends and his brother Nicky.
He was a very happy child and very adventurous, mischievous. He loved his brother. They'd play chase, hide and seek, but they were just adventurous and always smiling and playing happily. My sister moved into a new house. We were only streets apart. We were always in each other's houses. The cousins were like brothers and sisters.
On Friday, the 2nd of May, 1997, Joe and his brother went to stay at their aunt's home in Huddersfield.
I dropped Joe and Nicky off and gave them both a kiss and a hug and told them that I'll be back in a couple of days. I missed them while I was away. Spoke to Joe the night before I came back to make sure that they were behaving and everything was fine. He was looking forward to me coming home.
This would be the last time Tracy would speak with Joe.
Hello, fire brigade.
But there's a house on fire.
Approximately 5 o'clock in the morning, the emergency services were called.
There's a fire, there's about 4 kids trapped upstairs.
Smoke pouring out of the bedroom window. There are children in there.
We are on our way.
The initial call had come from a neighbour 2 doors down.
There's an incident. There's a fire going on in the house. Yes, sir, we're on our way.
He actually smashed the ground floor window and attempted to get in, but was fought back by the ferocity of the flames. The aunt and her 2 children got out by smashing an upstairs rear bedroom window. But sadly, Joe and his brother Nicky trapped inside. The fire brigade managed to get into the address, and upstairs in the front bedroom they found Nicky suffering the effects of smoke inhalation. And very sadly, in the rear upstairs bedroom they located Joe's lifeless body. Fire officers brought Joe out of the property and he was taken in a police car directly to Huddersfield Royal Infirmary.
While Joe was raced to hospital, Tracy had just returned to collect her young sons.
Approaching the road where my sister lived, I do remember seeing a lot of neighbours outside. And I didn't even recognise the house. There was a police officer on duty and I asked him where my kids were. And he told me to go up to the infirmary. I knew it was something bad as soon as they took me into the family room. Told me that the cousins were okay. They said that Nicky was okay. And then she paused for a while and then said that Joe died. That's when my world just fell apart. I was hysterical, absolutely hysterical. I wanted to see him. They advised me not to go see him.
Joe had suffered from the effects of smoke inhalation and severe burns and passed away in hospital.
And I had to tell Nicky that Joe had passed away because at that point he didn't know. It was like a dream. It was like I was watching myself go through all those emotions. It didn't feel real. Not even in the moment when I was telling Nicky about Joe, it didn't feel real.
West Yorkshire Police began investigating and discovered a green 5-litre container abandoned near the scene, which they believe had been used to pour petrol through the letterbox of the property and set it alight.
The senior investigating officer, within a very, very short period of time, declared this a murder investigation. From there, a detailed forensic examination was conducted at the scene. And it was found that this was a deliberate ignition. This was no accident. Unfortunately, no suspect was identified at that time.
In 2010, West Yorkshire Police launched an appeal featured on Crimewatch.
Do you know why this family were targeted?
The key aspect in any homicide investigation is to establish motive. In this case, we looked at every aspect of the McCafferty's life and those connected with them, but we weren't able to establish any reason at all why they should be attacked.
The case has never closed.
We still have no concrete motive for why this fire was set. We cannot get to the bottom of why such a callous act would have taken place. I've viewed those crime scene photographs numerous times, and I'm really, really surprised that anybody actually got out of that house alive.
It's affected us all as a family. Half of me died with it. I remember when he first died, I thought, I'm going to end up forgetting what he looks like, but I'll never forget what he looks like. And I'll never forget his voice. I'm going to carry on until I find out who's done this to my son. I just think that whoever has done it can't have any emotions or a conscience. He nearly killed a whole family. Joe died, Nicky nearly died. I just can't comprehend how somebody could do that. That's the hardest part, not having any answers. I do hope that somebody does come forward. 27 years is far too long for any parent to be waiting to find out who's killed their son. I miss him. I miss him every day. He was 7 years old. Nobody deserves to die in that way.
This is such a tragic case, utterly devastating. Well, here to tell us more is DCI Damien Roebuck from West Yorkshire Police. Thanks so much for coming in today, Damien. This is a case that actually holds quite a lot of significance to you personally, isn't it?
It does, yes. I joined West Yorkshire Police in July 1996. I've actually been posted to Huddersfield in the January of 1997. Now, this was the first major investigation and murder inquiry that occurred after I joined the police. I worked that area, I followed the investigation in the early stages and through all the other appeals. So when I got the chance as senior investigating officer to review this, I jumped at it.
I know you're keen to find justice still, aren't you? We heard from Joe's mum, Tracy, in the film there. What more can you tell viewers watching this morning about the investigation?
So think back to May Day, bank holiday, 1997, 2 days after the general election. Joe and Nicky have gone to their aunties to have a sleepover with their cousins. In the early hours, of approximately 5 o'clock in that morning, somebody's attended at that address and deliberately poured petrol through the letterbox, igniting it and causing, as you can see, devastation in there. The aunt and the 2 cousins managed to get out through an upstairs rear bedroom, but when the fire service got in there, they located Nicky upstairs in the front bedroom, suffering from smoke inhalation and burns, and they found Joe's lifeless body in the rear bedroom. They got him outside. He was taken immediately to a Huddersfield Royal Infirmary by a police vehicle, but sadly he succumbed to those injuries and died as he got to the Huddersfield Royal Infirmary.
Heartbreaking, Damien, it really is. Can you tell us any more about this accelerant that was used? Did it help to provide any clues?
So what we know is it was unleaded petrol and it had been taken to the scene in this oil container, this Unipart 50/50 oil container. What I would ask is people to think back. Did you see anybody around that time in unusual circumstances in the early hours with a container like that? Did you have it taken from a vehicle possibly or from a garage? That's what was being used. That's what has taken the accelerant there. So we're keen to know anybody who might have seen anybody with one of those containers in the early hours of Saturday the 3rd of May.
I think for anybody watching this, myself included, is just thinking, why? Why would this happen? Is there any possible motive that you can think of?
We've looked at motive, there's nothing within the family makeup that would suggest they would be targeted. It's a 7-year-old boy. We looked at, there were previous fires in the area, car fires, and had a look and see if they were linked. So we'd encourage anybody with any information about those fires to come forward as well. But regarding concrete motive, no, we have nothing.
So let's go through this. For anybody watching this morning, how can they help you?
So think back, May Day bank holiday, 1997. People will have, the person involved in this, their demeanour must have changed. They must have confided in somebody. They've just killed a 7-year-old boy. If that person has spoken to you and told you about this, 27 years is a long time to think about this. Come forward and give us that name and let us know who told you this. Also, thinking back, think to people who might have come home. They may have smelled of accelerants, they may have suffered flash burns. You've seen the devastation it caused, or actually burns to the clothing, and put that together with the green oil container and come forward with a name. Let's have justice for Joe and his family.
Absolutely, Damien. Really appreciate you coming in today. As Damien said, 27 years, it's a long time to keep a secret. Can you help finally solve this awful case and help Joe's grieving family? Please do get in touch. The number to call, 08000 468 999.
Eureka moment.
I'm now joined by a familiar face on Crimewatch, DS Pembe Reyes from the Met Police. Pembe, you've had 3 recent appeals in the last couple of years, and you've had 3 really positive responses from the viewers, especially the last one, which you can update us on now.
Yes, so back in March we appealed in relation to the rapes of 2 young girls. It was committed in Enfield in 1992. The girls were only 13 and 14 years of age at the time, and they were abused in a pub, in a flat above a pub. Thankfully, down to your Crimewatch viewers, we managed to successfully identify who that suspect was. Unfortunately, he has passed away, which means we were unable to bring him to justice. However, the fact he was identified has brought his victims some much-needed closure.
Yeah, closure, as you say, and a good result for you and your team, Pembe. But there's more work to be done today because there's a horrific-sounding attempted rape that you need our viewers' help with today.
That's right. So February 26th, 2021, our victim, who was 21 years of age at the time, a female, she was walking alone. We can see from CCTV that the suspect then follows her from 4th Street onto Raynham Road. He follows her for the duration of Raynham Road, where he actually paces and chases after her at one point. And then as she comes off of the road onto a secluded pathway, that's where he attacks her. He placed a hand over her mouth, dragged her into a grassy area which was really secluded, and he attempted to rape her. Whilst he struggled to undo his trousers, he removed a hand from his mouth, which then enabled the victim to scream for help. Thankfully, this alerted nearby residents who came to her aid. The suspect then ran away, being chased by the brave residents, but unfortunately he managed to get away.
Oh, it's awful. So he actually had his hand over her mouth at one point. When he took his hand away, she managed to raise the alarm and he was chased away. We can just see there, this is Edmonton in North London, and we can see now some CCTV, Pembe, that you've provided us. Can you talk us through what's happening here?
Yeah, so you can see the victim on the right-hand side. She's wearing white, and this is where the suspect is practically running to catch up with her.
So on the left-hand side of the screen, that male running is the suspect you want to identify.
Yeah.
And what about this here?
So the victim is just to the bottom of the screen in white, and as she comes off into a secluded area, the suspect is still loitering behind her, and as he comes off of shot, this is where he then attacks the victim.
Now, we lose it from CCTV there, and sadly you think there's a reason why we cannot see any further CCTV at this point, because of the area he chose.
Yeah, he's chose that spot for a reason. It's really dark, it's secluded, and it's a grassy area where there's nothing surrounding it. So he's made that decision at that time to attack her.
Awful. Now, we've got another clip of CCTV here. Can you just talk us through what's happening now?
So this is him running away from the scene. You don't see the residents chasing after him, but that's exactly what they're doing, which is why he's running at pace. He's now running back towards 4th Street, which was the initial direction that he came from.
And those brave residents actually giving chase, and he's clearly making off there. It's just awful what's happened here. What do we know about the suspect?
Not very much, which is why we're here today appealing to the Crimewatch viewers. What we do know is that shortly after the attack, he boarded a Route 149 bus. This was outside the Tesco Express on Collyton Way. He then got off the bus at Edmonton Green, so it was a short journey. He is described as a black male, aged between 25 to 30, around 6'2" in height. He was wearing a dark-coloured three-quarter-length padded coat and a black reflective backpack, as you can see on the CCTV there. We also think he had a beanie-style hat on, or he had the hood of the coat up, and he had a blue surgical face mask on, covering his face.
Now, that's interesting, because we saw some sort of face covering on the CCTV when he was outside, yet here, when he's boarding the bus, we can see there's no face covering, and you found that interesting, especially this was COVID times, or just coming out of the pandemic, but there's certainly no face covering going in to the bus.
Yeah, so he's not wearing the face mask to protect himself from COVID. He's clearly doing it to disguise his face.
Yeah, interesting there. So that is the person you want to identify. I mean, clearly this has had a huge impact on the victim. She has provided us a statement that says since the attack, she has never felt the same. Previously, she was very confident and happy, but she's still traumatised to this day and constantly feels in persistent fear. She suffers from flashbacks and nightmares, and says this whole attack has taken a massive toll on her mental health. I mean, it's just so hard hearing those words from this young woman. So, Pembe, who do you need to hear from today?
I'm appealing to your Crimewatch viewers to look at this man, and if you recognise him, please come forward. Someone will know who he is. What's worrying is there's generally an escalation in behaviour for these types of offences, so his clothing and his behaviour would suggest this was premeditated. So the chances are this wasn't his first offence, and what we want to stop is him doing this to anyone else. The victim's life has been turned upside down, so we need to stop this man, and anyone who knows any information, we urge you to come forward.
Oh, Pembe, thank you. Have a good look. If you recognise this man or know anything that might help detectives solve this truly awful case, please do get in touch, either using our QR code or calling us on the number below. Or if you prefer, just send us an email at cwl@bbc.co.uk.
First this morning, when Camille Gordon came from Jamaica to the UK to be a teacher, her family had no idea that a part-time job would put her in danger of being killed.
Camille was a beautiful little soul, wonderful personality. She was a sweet girl. Camille wanted to work with young people. That was her passion, to educate young children. To do homeworks with them when they have their work from school. They would come over to the house and she helped them to do it. She was a people person.
In 2001, at the age of 20, Camille left her family in Jamaica to follow her dream to be a teacher, moving to Birmingham to live with an aunt.
She said, "Mom, I think it's a better education there, so I'm going to take that chance." So she was excited to go because she knew she would get a better degree where she could work to help other children. I was happy for her because her dreams would come through. So I was excited for her to go. It was a happy time for her. I had a cell phone, so we spoke most of the time.
A year later, Camille moved to London, but at that point, she wasn't able to pursue her teaching ambitions.
She had to put that dreams on hold, mainly for financial reasons, where she ended up working sort of multiple jobs, and she was sending money back home to her family in Jamaica. And then in December 2003, an opportunity came up for her to work one of her several jobs at the Blue Bunny Club, which is Archer Street in Soho. They didn't serve alcohol. People would go to be entertained and engage in conversations. However, the fees were quite high, and often, although a client would be presented with those fees when their arrival, they probably didn't take too much notice.
On the 1st of March 2004, Camille was one of 2 hostesses there.
Around 6:30, Camille was working at the entrance to the club, where she would be engaging with various members of the public walking past, inviting them into the club, and she's approached by a male. She engages in conversation and he decides to enter the club for a £5 entry fee. He's a dark-skinned male, approximately 5'5" to 5'8", of slim build, wearing dark clothing and a hat.
After chatting for about 10 minutes, the man decided to leave, and he was presented with a bill for £375.
Which he was quite disgruntled about. But it was agreed that he would pay £80 and then would leave the club, which he did, and by all account, it was quite calm.
Witnesses saw the man leaving and going a short way down a street near the Apollo Theatre, where he made a phone call.
A short while later, he returned to the club and was met by a different lady who was working at the entrance, and he walked off.
At around 7:10, Camille was back outside working the door, and the same man returned. She was pushed inside the doorway. It's there. She was stabbed in the chest. While staff rushed to Camille's aid, her attacker fled.
Members of the public heard her scream, and as did people within the club that evening. Straight away, first aid was given to her, and an ambulance arrived very, very shortly afterwards.
I was coming from work and I was on the bus. I got a call. "Oh, Camille met in an accident and she's on her way to the hospital." I went straight to my mom's house and I was telling her, we were crying and praying.
Unfortunately, she could not be saved and tragically died of her injuries later at the University College Hospital.
Camille was just 23 years old.
I was on the ground, I was screaming. Camille was such a perfect person. I don't know who could ever do that to her.
A murder investigation was launched.
We strongly believe that the male that entered the club and engaged with Camille in conversation is that same male that returned and fatally stabbed her. A substantial amount of officers were deployed onto the investigation, and all the CCTV cameras from the surrounding area were seized and viewed, which enabled us to identify the man that we believe is responsible, running from the Blue Bunny Club to Archer Street, into Great Windmill Street, and then into the Piccadilly train station.
Given the time and location of the murder, investigators are convinced there could be witnesses who could help.
This is at the heart of London. There's a theatre next door. At 7 o'clock in the evening, there would have been a lot of people about. So although it's literally just off Shaftesbury Avenue, it's a very, very busy area. Very unusual that this would take place.
Although time has passed, there's still determination to get justice for Camille's family.
It's just over 20 years since Camille died, and she is not forgotten by us as the police, who will continue to investigate and will never close this case until we find the person responsible, and certainly not forgotten by her family, her loved ones, her friends, who still, you know, obviously remember this and live with this every single day. It's brilliant that we are able to review this case now and hopefully bring some closure to the family.
I am pleading, I'm begging, gentle people, if you know something, please say something to the police. We need to put a closure to this. Every day is the same thing. It's like it just happened. Just imagine if you were in this situation.
I'm now with DI Amanda Gregg from the Met Police. Morning, Amanda. It's just so sad, but can you just remind us what those key moments were from that night 20 years ago?
Yes, Camille was working as a hostess at the Blue Bunny Club, which is an unlicensed club. She'd been working a double shift that day, and she was approached by a male who came into the club. She engaged in conversation for a short period of time, and then he was presented with a bill for £375, rightly so. He was disgruntled, but it was agreed he'd pay £80 and he left. He sort of milled about outside for a while, made a phone call. A short while later, about 7:10, he came back to the club, where he pushed Camille into the doorway and fatally stabbed her in the chest. Witnesses then saw him run down Archer Street towards Shaftesbury Avenue, which had been really busy at the time, and to Piccadilly Circus underground tube station, where he caught the Bakerloo line southbound.
OK, we can see that on the map there, the direction he went after that fatal stabbing. As you say, it's a busy part of central London, lots of people around, lots of potential witnesses. But when he went on to the tube station there was some CCTV that you can play us now. You provided us this, where we can see the suspect. Can you just talk me through what we're seeing?
Yes, so this is where he enters the tube station, and he moves through the tube station sort of like very naturally, like a local. He's caught several times, and at some point he removes his hat and he makes his way right down to the very end of the southbound platform for Bakerloo line.
Just looking at the persona there, Amanda, he seems very calm.
He does seem incredibly calm, considering what he's just done, yes.
Yeah, and can you just describe what we know about this person?
He is approximately 5'5" to 5'8" high. He's black-skinned. He was wearing an Indian's baseball jacket, which obviously we have here in the studio, dark trousers and light trainers, and at some point he removed his hat.
Well, let's have a look at that jacket, because we've got one here in the studio, and this is actually one that your officers actually managed to source 20 years ago.
That's
it's
correct,
a direct
at the time,
replica.
yeah.
What do we know about this?
This is a Cleveland Indians jacket, and you can see it's really distinctive motif on the arm and emblazoned across the front. very, very distinct. And if somebody knew somebody was wearing that jacket at the time, they would remember it.
Yeah, they certainly would. Now, there's also a second person that you really want to identify who came into a police station.
That's correct, yeah. 2 days after Camille was murdered, a white male came into Kennington Police Station, which is in central London, saying he had information about the murder at the Blue Bunny Club. Unfortunately, he left before officers could speak to him and get that information. He was a white male, approximately 35 years at the time, light brown hair and quite prominent cheekbones. So we really, really like to find this man and speak to him and find out what information he
35
has.
at the time would, of course, be 55 or thereabouts today. We need to know what that information that person has. Now, I know you and your team are in contact with the family constantly. It would mean so much for them to get answers. If anyone's got those answers at home and they're yet to come forward, there is a financial reward that's on offer for this. Tell us about that.
That's correct. We have £20,000 reward for the successful charge and conviction of the person who was responsible. And, you know, allegiances have changed. 20 years has gone past. We really hope, you know, maybe he spoke to someone. Really hope that we can find the person who was responsible.
As do we, Amanda. Thank you for that. So have a look. Does this jacket look familiar to you? Do you know anything about this awful attack and who this could be? Then now's the time to do the right thing and come forward. Our numbers are on the screen.
And the potential ramifications.
But first, on the 13th of August 1981, 36-year-old Carol Morgan was attacked and murdered in a home in Linslade, Bedfordshire. Police weren't able to charge anyone with her murder until 2023, when Carol's husband, Alan Morgan, was eventually convicted of conspiring to murder his wife and sentenced to more than 21 years in prison. But the person who carried out the attack has never been found. Joining me now is DI Richard Stott from the Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire Major Crime Unit. Richard, thanks so much for being with us this morning. This was a huge case at the time, mainly for the brutality of the attack. What more can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so Carol was murdered back in 1981. It was in the storeroom of the shop where she worked and then lived above. And the levels of violence that was used was just really, really unusual.
What were the original suspicions around the case at the time?
So her husband, Alan, at the time, knew that he was having an affair with another woman at the time. There was concerns around him, but he had taken the children to the cinema that evening. There was also discussions whether it was a burglary. The scene sort of had aspects of being staged. There was a phone line cut which had blood on it, which would suggest maybe it was afterwards. And there was also a desk where some money was stolen from. The desk was quite unusual because it had a sort of locking mechanism where you had to pull out the middle drawer partway through to be able to remove the drawer. And obviously the money was taken from within that drawer, but nothing else in the office was kind of looked at.
And the nature of the attack, it came across as quite a personal attack, didn't it?
Yeah, some of the injuries that Carol received suggested it was quite a sort of personal element to what happened.
Yeah. People were suspicious about the husband, Alan, who you just mentioned there. In fact, we've got a clip of him talking to press. Let's take a look.
How did the death of your wife affect you?
Affect me? Well, I closed the business for 7 weeks while the police were investigating it. I lost a lot of stock throughout, and I've had to sell the business now at a loss.
I've got to be honest with you, Richard, just listening to Alan speak there, I mean, no mention of his wife, Carol, at any point.
It's still shocking watching that clip, his reaction to that question.
Yeah. So how was Alan eventually convicted?
So as part of our cold case review process, we looked at the case, and in 2018 it was reopened. And as part of that, we visited a lot of witnesses. One of those witnesses we visited gave us some fresh evidence around a meeting with Alan in a pub in Linslade where they discussed about ways that Carol could be killed. That person didn't obviously help with the murder, but obviously those inquiries have now led us to Alan being convicted, now in prison for life.
So we know that Alan spoke to somebody, potentially paid somebody to go ahead and murder Carol. Any forensics around that side of the case?
So in 1981, it's sort of quite early days of forensics where a lot of items were seized. We have one fingerprint that remains unidentified, but we also got a photo fit from back at the time. We're a little bit cautious with it because obviously this was available earlier on. It could have been somebody else, but obviously this is from witnesses at the time seen near the shop.
Yeah. And we know just how devastated Carol's family have been left by this, understandably so. In fact, we've actually got an impact statement, haven't we, from one of Carol's children, which I can read out now. It says, in 2019, the police reopened the investigation, and the shock of finding out that the people that I had called my parents were suspected to have been involved in my mother's death was the most shocking and distressing moment of my adult life. I'm struggling to come to terms with the reality of this, quite simply because it is just too difficult to comprehend that it could be true. Really powerful words there, Richard. For people that are watching this morning, who are you appealing to for information?
Well, yeah, it's really people that haven't come forward to us before. Obviously, the inquiry's been running a long time. The pubs around Ginstead and Dunstable are quite key in this. We know that Alan would be in the Ship, the Dolphin and the Claypipe pubs. We have some other witnesses around that. There's also another pub in nearby Dunstable, the Wagon and Horses, where we know there was people heard talking about a job they'd done for cigarettes and money, and Alan had been seen with those people around that time. So, yeah, it's really those people that could have been at the pubs. And also now Alan's in prison, allegiances can change. If people have been in fear, we would urge them to come forward. And obviously we just want to get justice for Carol and her family after all this time.
Absolutely. Richard, thanks so much for coming in and telling us more about this. 40 years, it's such a long time for a family to live with, not knowing who was responsible for their mother's death. So please do get in touch if you think you can help. All the ways to contact us are on the screen below, and you can also scan our QR code. Get you straight through to our website.
First today, it is an appeal that we've run before about Robert Hart, who got into an altercation at a festival and ended up losing his life. His mother has spoken to us again about how important it is for her and her family to find the man responsible.
We've still not come to terms with it. That Robert won't come walking through the door with his jokes and with his warmth and his laughter.
We were pretty much inseparable since the day we met. He was my best friend. He really was. And he never let me down.
On Saturday, the 7th of June 2014, Robert and his girlfriend Gemma met up with 3 of their friends. They were all going to the Parklife Music Festival in Manchester.
We'd been to Parklife the year before, but he had gone out and got the tickets and came home and told me that he had a surprise for me.
He was such a lovable, happy boy. He was very funny. He made everybody smile, his jokes. He was a lovely, lovely boy. His teacher used to say that before they saw Robert, they could hear him because of his laughter. Our relationship was good. It was good. There was a lot of love. He took me on holiday. He just said, "I'll take you on holiday, Mum." And I said, "Oh, Robert, that's so kind. Where shall we go?" He said, "You choose. Paris." And, you know, he took me to Paris for a weekend. And he took me all round, and because of his love of art, we went into the Louvre. That memory of Robert taking me, age 24, to Paris, that will always stay with me.
It was like raining and then the sun came out as soon as we got there, really. Danced, bought some drinks. We just sat there and spoke to people and just had a lovely time together, just talking. And then went to watch the end of Rudimental. After that, we were just waiting for Snoop Dogg to come on. There was an inflatable doll. It got chucked over once and then chucked back over. And then the second time, it hit me, covered me in mud. And that's when Rob turned around. Don't know what you're doing. He actually said he didn't want any trouble, and that's when they've turned into a scuffle. I was trying to get Rob away, and that's when I got knocked over.
No problem, ain't no problem. We're stepping up to the ball, then you
And then it was only within seconds that he came down next to me.
Robert! Somebody help me! Robert! Please!
Someone just said to me, "We've got him back." The next thing I knew, he was just apologising to me. He was dazed, you know. But then you think, because people are telling you that he's all right, and it was far from it, really.
Robert was taken by ambulance to a local hospital, but his condition quickly deteriorated. He was now fighting for his life.
We immediately got to the hospital and Robert was in an induced coma. And we all prayed and prayed. Seeing him unconscious, with that many tubes in special intensive care, fighting for his life. And that is something that I will never, never, ever forget. He had bruises on the back of his hands where he'd protected his face. This attack was so completely unnecessary. And that punch was so brutal, so forceful, that it completely knocked Robert out and it caused a bleed on his brain. He never returned home. He died 5 days later. We have to continue with our lives while Robert lies in Macclesfield Cemetery, and that is very hard. I would like to think that he would have followed his dream, wherever that took him, even if it meant working abroad, travelling, whatever that dream, I would have wished him all the very, very best of luck. I would like Robert to be remembered as my son who had a huge sense of humour, very, very kind, and a true gentleman.
It really is a heartbreaking investigation, and Robert's family deserve answers. Earlier today, I spoke to DS Claire Smith from Greater Manchester Police, and I began by asking her to remind us how the events unfolded.
Yeah, so Robert and his girlfriend were enjoying themselves at the Park Life Festival. They were waiting for Snoop Dogg to come on. There was an inflatable doll that was being thrown around the crowd, and as it got thrown over them, it hit Robert's girlfriend, Gemma, which covered her in mud. Robert turned around and spoke to the person who'd thrown it, just went to his girlfriend's defence, really, and this led to a bit of an altercation. A punch was thrown, Robert was hit, he fell to the ground and he lost consciousness. He was given CPR at the scene, and he did come around and he was able to make his way to the medical tent, where from there he got an ambulance to the hospital. But unfortunately, a few days later, he died.
I mean, it really is a tragic situation, but it's also a stark reminder of even just one punch and the dangers that can come from a single punch, as we've just seen with this case.
Yeah, one punch hits can genuinely take lives, and as you said, it's a very tragic case. Of course, the person responsible may well not have been aware of the fatal impact that his actions had, because he left the scene immediately afterwards.
What do we know about that person? What do we know about the suspect?
So the suspect is described as a mixed-race male in his mid-20s, around 6 foot to 6'2". He had a muscular build with short dark hair, which was shaved at the sides. Now, he may have been with other people, and we believe that at some point he was seen with a so far unidentified female. She's described as a white female in her mid-20s with shoulder-length blonde hair, slim build, around 5'7" tall, and possibly wearing a pink T-shirt.
Now, this June marked 10 years since this actually happened. So why is it so important for you to reappeal for this case right now to try and find the answers you so desperately need?
Well, we're hopeful that the passage of time may mean that those who didn't feel comfortable talking to us in 2014 may now feel brave enough to do so. So if you witnessed the attack or someone confided in you afterwards about what happened, or if you recognise the description of the person responsible, we would like to hear from you.
You're appealing for witnesses. We can actually see just how many people may have been there at the time. We can see the scale of this. There are thousands of attendees, and you're hoping that some of them may have seen or heard something. Can you remind us of the sort of time that this would have taken place?
Yeah, so it was Saturday the 7th of June 2014, and it occurred shortly after 9 o'clock at night. Now, with it being early June, it was still quite light out. Rudimental had just finished their set on the stage, and the crowd were waiting for Snoop Dogg to come on. Robert and his girlfriend were stood in that circled area of the crowd. We know there were other assaults in other areas of the festival that weekend, which there were later convictions for. So viewers might well believe that this case is solved, but it really isn't. It is unsolved, and it's an ongoing investigation, and we still need the public's help to get to the bottom of this. Someone out there will know who was involved, and we're appealing directly to them today to do the right thing.
And another way people may be able to help without even knowing it is the amount of people that would have had cameras and camera phones and possibly recording some of what was happening at the time. They may have captured some of this, and you're appealing to those people, if they've got any footage or photographs, to send them to you. You've even got a special portal where they can send this information.
Absolutely, yeah. If you were taking videos or photos at the festival and you were standing near to that area, you may well have unwittingly captured something that could help us in our investigation. Detectives have already viewed thousands of images and hours of footage, but if you have something that you haven't yet given to us, we would like to see it. You can send it to us directly at our dedicated email address, helpbobby@gmp.police.uk. Also, if you don't feel comfortable coming to the police directly, we'd encourage you to do so via Crime Stoppers.
Thank you, Claire. And if anyone did need that extra incentive to come forward, there is a substantial reward that's been put up for this as well.
Yeah, the reward's increased, and we're now offering £50,000 for information which leads to the conviction of the person responsible. Robert's family have had to live without answers for 10 years now, and we need the person responsible for this, or anybody who knows who they are, to come forward and give us that information. We'd really like to give his family some closure.
Absolutely, Claire. Thank you for joining us today. Now is the time to come forward if you know anything about that fatal assault on this man. Give us a call or contact us on any of the ways that are on your screen right now, down at the bottom by the clock.
Help finding a man wanted in connection with a sexual assault at a club in Bridgwater. Joining us now to tell us more is DS Duncan Varell. Thanks so much for coming in this morning. Let's start, Duncan, with where and when it happened.
So this happened on the 28th of October into the 29th. So it happened at about 10 to 1 on the 29th of October, which was a Sunday at the Palace nightclub in Bridgwater, which is on a place called Penalty.
And it was around 12:41 in the morning, wasn't it, that the victim was sitting down near the DJ booth?
Yeah, that's right. She was sat down at the DJ booth. A male approached her. She made a comment about his hair. He stepped in and kissed her and then sexually assaulted her.
Which is absolutely shocking. The victim did actually report this to the door staff after the incident, didn't she?
That's correct. When she was able to break free of the suspect, she went directly to the door staff. The male was ejected from the club, but unfortunately we don't know where he went from there.
Well, let's talk about this male in a bit more detail, because we've actually got some CCTV footage, haven't we, which we can take a look at. Talk us through what we're seeing here, Duncan.
So this is footage of the male being removed from the club shortly after the incident took place.
Now, we've also got a really clear image of the man in question. Just go through the description that we've got of him.
Yeah, that's right. It was 2 nights before Halloween, so it was a celebratory weekend, so the club was quite packed, and there was also happened to be a photographer there that night, hence the reason we've been able to get this image. He's described as a black male, around 5'7" tall, in his late 20s, and he's got this very distinctive Afro-style hairstyle.
Yeah, someone may indeed recognise him from that image alone. You've also got some forensics relating to this case, haven't you?
We do have forensics. That may help us if we're able to identify the male. It's not conclusive on its own.
And as we've been saying, this really is a terrible assault. We've actually got a statement from the victim. She's been in touch with us and she said, after the incident, I was in a state of shock. Sexual assaults are what most women worry about going through in their life. But I always thought if it was me that I would be able to defend myself. I feel useless and like an idiot that I couldn't fight back. I mean, clearly this has had a huge effect on the victim. For anybody that's watching at home, Duncan, that may have some information relating to this case, what would you say to them?
Please get in touch. If you were at the club in the night and you had any interaction with this man, or very much so if you know who he is, if you could let us know, we can move this case forward so that the young lady can have some closure on what was a very traumatic incident.
Absolutely, that's so important, isn't it, Duncan? Thank you so much for coming in today. So take a good look. This image is incredibly clear. If you recognise him, pick up the phone. You can also scan our QR code for our contacts or check your screen just down by the clock for all the details. First this morning, the family of teenager Matthew Dolby, who was killed in July 2023, spoke to us about the tragic death of their son and how they need help from the public to be able to move on.
He was caring, he was loving, he was funny, he loved playing practical jokes, he was polite. Everybody who met Matthew loved him. He was a joy.
He was just finding his way in life, and we were enjoying watching him grow and turn into a young man. And you know, that's one of the hardest things about the situation we're in at the moment.
Matthew Dolby was 19 years old. He lived at home in Merseyside with his parents, Angela, Gary, and brother Tom.
The one thing he really liked to do was make us all laugh.
He just had lots of fun, and he was just full of fun. You know, things that were daft, like testing himself, eating pepper, or trying to get family members and cousins to eat pepper, and he found that hilarious.
He cared dearly for his family. Matthew has an older brother, and they were close from the day they were born. They would lie playing Xbox together on one of their beds. They went out together, they went to concerts together, and as a family, we went on holiday together every year.
On Friday, the 28th of July, 2023, Matthew was preparing to go on holiday to Ibiza.
He was going with a large group of friends, friends he's known for quite some time from school, and they had lots of activities planned, lots of events. Matthew's girlfriend was with him on the Friday night. She had dinner with us here, and she was helping him actually pick out those clothes, what he was going to wear, and helping him pack them. And
then they came down. They said, "We're going out for a little bit. We'll see you later."
Matthew's last words to me were, "I won't be long."
And that was the last time we saw him.
After being out with his girlfriend in a local pub, Matthew travelled to Ormskirk, where he was involved in an altercation.
We got awoken by a call around about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was a couple of Matthew's friends, and they said that Matthew had been hurt and we should go to the hospital. We were just
Worried sick and running round like crazy people to get our clothes on and jump in the car, and then off we went to the hospital.
Matthew had been struck on the head with a makeshift weapon and stabbed in the chest.
We were greeted really practically at the door of the hospital, which you automatically think, that's strange. This doesn't look like very good news. And we were taken into a room where we told that Matthew had been stabbed and he had unfortunately died.
It's that moment where our life just fell apart. We were looking at each other in disbelief. It was like we were having an out-of-body experience. I can recall Angela literally pleading with the doctor to go back in, and I don't think I will ever forget Angela, you know, literally begging the doctors to bring Matthew back.
In that moment, everything was taken from Matthew. He'll never have a 21st. He'll never actually pass his driving test. He will never get married. He will never maybe have a family, the family he was going to have. We will never see the wonderful person, the wonderful man Matthew would have grown up to be. All those joys that we would have had been taken away. And we ask ourselves, why? Why did somebody want to do that? Because the devastation that has caused us, our family, our friends, everybody, is unimaginable.
20-year-old Henry Horton has been jailed for Matthew's murder, but Lancashire police want to speak with a man called Thomas Jerez, who they believe has vital information about the case.
Somebody must know where he is. Somebody must recognise him, and we want your viewers' assistance today to tell us where he is, because we're desperately keen to speak to him. Matthew's parents, they absolutely deserve the truth and answers.
I appeal to the public to please help me, help my wife, help Matthew's brother. Please give us the information that leads to the arrest of Thomas Jerez. The yearning to see Matthew again is overwhelming.
I would give anything in the world for 5 minutes with Matthew. Just 5 minutes.
What this family has been through is utterly devastating. I'm joined now by Senior Investigating Officer DCI Andy Fallows, who you saw in the film there from Lancashire Constabulary. Andy, thank you so much for coming in this morning. Let's start by you just taking us through the timeline of events from that night.
Yeah, of course. So it was Friday the 28th of July 2023. And as you've heard, Matthew went out for the evening into the local pubs in McGrath with his girlfriend. We know that during the course of the evening, Matthew met with some of his friends, and he was part of a group that travelled from McGrath into Ormskirk, leaving McGrath at around 10 to midnight. They arrived in Ormskirk town centre just before midnight and walked through the town centre onto Railway Road, you can see there, arriving just after midnight, a couple of minutes after midnight. When they arrived, there was an altercation, there was a fight ensued, and during that incident, Matthew was attacked. He was struck on the head with a makeshift weapon, a rock which was in a sports sock, and he was stabbed in the chest. Matthew managed to make his way from the scene approximately 300 or 400 metres before he collapsed. Members of the public ran to his assistance to give him first aid, and the paramedics arrived. He was conveyed to Aintree Hospital and sadly succumbed to his injuries.
I mean, this was a brutal and needless attack, wasn't it, Andy? I cannot imagine what Gary and Angela, Matthew's parents, have been going through and continue to go through. Now, there has been a conviction made in relation to this case, but it's still very much an ongoing investigation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. So in March 2024, a male named Henry Horton was convicted of Matthew's murder. Henry Horton was the male that struck Matthew on the head with a makeshift weapon. However, like you say, it's still very much an ongoing investigation. And we would like to speak to a male named Thomas Jerez in relation to that investigation.
So this is the man here. And actually, we've got another image of Thomas Jerez, haven't we, Andy? Because he does look significantly different in these two images. So it's important to take note of both of them in case anybody recognises him. Yeah, that's correct. And it's important to know as well that this is 14 months ago. So his appearance may have changed. His hair may be shorter or a different colour now. There is a Crime Stoppers reward, isn't there, in relation to this case?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a significant one. It's £20,000 for information relating to the arrest of Thomas Jerez, also known as Thomas Brown. And that's not only a significant sum, it's slightly unusual. It's information just for his arrest, not information leading to his conviction.
And just quickly, finally, in terms of Thomas's whereabouts, you're connecting him to Spain, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. We believe Thomas Jerez has left the UK and is now in Spain. We believe people have assisted him flee the country, and we're actively investigating those people. And any offences that are revealed, people will be brought to justice.
Well, hopefully people watching this morning will be able to help with this case. Andy, thank you so much for telling us more about it.
First today, it's a case that has puzzled detectives for more than 3 decades. The murder of entrepreneur Ricky Hayward, who was gunned down in his flat in Southampton in 1989.
Ricky Hayward was 36 years old. He had his own business. He had a jeweller shop in Shirley, which is part of Southampton. Ricky lived in the flat, which was above the jeweller shop, which was called Ambience. There was an entrance alongside the property that went through to the back.
Ricky was a budding entrepreneur. His friends said he was always looking for ways to earn money. He was streetwise and security conscious, and his property was fitted with the latest cameras. In autumn 1989, he had a new scheme and was trying to negotiate a deal on a property in Cadenham, near Southampton.
Ricky was keen to invest. It was a farm with a number of acres.
He had put down a deposit of £25,000, but needed another £55,000 to close the deal.
He was speaking to financial consultants to see if he could obtain a loan. He was looking at all options. Ricky was keen that in the future there could be an opportunity to sell on some of the land. He saw this as a great business proposal.
On Monday, the 16th of October 1989, at around 12:30, he met 2 financial consultants to discuss a loan. But he became frustrated after being told it could take days for the money to come through. At 5 p.m, a passerby witnessed Ricky having what looked like a heated discussion.
Somebody in the shop talking to Ricky, waving his arms around.
That man was never traced. Roughly an hour later, Ricky closed the shop.
He would have one of those sandwich boards. On this particular Monday, he was with another person and he brought the board into the shop.
More witnesses reported seeing Ricky being helped by another man.
Also around this time, there was a person seen at the back of the flat, potentially carrying a heavy object which was in a white bag.
Neither of these men have ever been traced. At around 6:30, Ricky made his way upstairs.
And around half an hour later, what sounded like gunshots were heard by a neighbour. Shortly after that, 2 people were seen to run out of the alleyway, which was to the side of the shop, and leave in an orangey-red saloon car.
The crime scene suggested to detectives this murder was premeditated. Sometime between 7 and 8:30, the shop was broken into. Investigators believe Ricky's keys were used to get in. The safe was opened, but his security cameras weren't working and recorded nothing.
Ricky would have been well connected with other people in similar trades, whether they were gold dealers or antique dealers. So part of the investigation would be looking to try and establish who he had contact with, who his associates were, who his friends were, to try to understand what could be the motive for what happened.
4 months after the murder, Crimewatch broadcast an appeal looking for Ricky's killer.
Our second reconstruction tonight is a case which Hampshire police have been investigating for the past 16 weeks. 36-year-old Ricky Haywood was shot dead at his flat in Southampton on the evening of Monday, the 16th of October.
Yes, this is a gun which the experts tell us is very similar to the gun that was used to kill Mr. Haywood. It's a small .22 caliber handgun.
At the time, this was one of the biggest investigations the force had covered.
In the region of 11,000 people were spoken to. They obtained in the region of 4,000 statements, and despite all these inquiries, the person responsible was never found.
35 years on, Ricky's family still want answers.
Ricky's mum, who's no longer with us, she was desperate to get justice for Ricky. And sadly, she never got to learn the truth. I believe there are people out there that haven't spoken to us yet, and I want them to come forward now. We never give up when we've got a case. We want to get justice.
Well, hopefully we can help with that this morning. I'm joined now by Detective Inspector Elizabeth Brunt from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, who you saw in the film there. Thank you so much for coming in this morning, Elizabeth. As we heard in the film, the murder happened over 35 years ago, but the desire to bring justice, that never goes away, does it?
No, you're right. So 35 years on, we really need to bring whoever was responsible for this murder to justice. And we need closure for the family. So you heard on the film that, sadly, Ricky's mum has since died. She was broken-hearted, and the rest of the family we're still in touch with, and they are desperate for those answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the family, Elizabeth, we've got an impact statement, haven't we, from Ricky's sister that she shared. She said, as a family, we cannot express enough the huge impact Ricky's death has had on us. The pain never goes away. My mum never had peace, and it slowly ate away at her. And she went to the grave never knowing who committed this awful crime. It's such a cloud to hang over the family for so many years, isn't it? Let's talk a little bit more about Ricky, Elizabeth. What type of person was he?
So Ricky was loved by his family and his friends. He had the jewellery business, and that occupied a lot of his time. But as we know, he was looking to buy some land in the New Forest area.
Let's take a look at the details of the night in question. What can you tell us?
So you see here, this is the shop, ambience. It's no longer there, but the pharmacy still is, so people will know. It had the figures on the top here. So Ricky had this shop, and he lived in the flat that was round the back. You get through the alleyway at the back there. And it was on Monday, the 16th of October, 1989, that he was seen taking the sign inside the flat. And then during that evening, he returned to his flat, and whilst inside, he was shot multiple times at close range.
This is a cold-blooded murder, isn't it? There are several persons of interest when it comes to this case, isn't there?
That's right. So we had a sighting. So 2 people were seen running out of the alleyway and getting into a red/orange saloon car and driving away. So we're very interested in this car. Also, we know that there'll be people out there that know exactly who committed this murder and why.
We saw in the film that the jewellery shop was broken into. Is there any known motive?
So we believe that this murder was premeditated, and what we don't know from the investigation, despite all these years, what the exact motive was. Now, I believe that there's people out there, now that allegiances may have changed, that are in a position that can come forward, and they would be doing the right thing by coming forward now and telling us exactly what they know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Over 35 years has passed, allegiances do change, and people might be watching at home. They might have that small piece of information. They might think it's insignificant, but what would you say to anybody that is at home watching that can help?
Yeah, so maybe people lived in Shirley at the time. They may have worked there as well. But we've reopened this case up. and we need new information. It wasn't solved before, but we know that there are people that can ring us, and what I would say is to those people that know who was responsible, doing nothing is no longer an option. So they can contact us in a number of ways. They can ring 101, they can use your Crimewatch programme so your viewers can call in that way. We're also very keen that if people want to be anonymous, that doesn't stop them coming forward. They can use the charity Crime Stoppers and come that way, which is independent of the police. And I'm happy to say that there is a reward available, £20,000, for people that submit information through Crime Stoppers, and it leads to a successful conviction.
You've also got a link, haven't you, which anyone can contact, which is mip.police.uk, which we can see on the screen there.
Yes, that MIP link is really important too. It does have a series of questions on, and I'm really keen that people use that link and tell us what they know now.
Elizabeth, really appreciate you coming in and telling us more about this case. Thank you so much. So, can you help? Hampshire Police have a QR code with information all about this case that you can find on our website. If you know anything at all, as Elizabeth said, please do get in touch. You can use the contact details below, or of course you can call Crime Stoppers.